Okay, so when you hear the name Apostle Paul, what comes to mind? Probably, a pillar of Christianity, right? A guy whose letters literally shaped the New Testament. But what if I told you there's another side to his story? A really, really strange side. Let's get into it.
So get this, a bunch of early Christian groups, the ones who were later called heretics, the Gnostics, they absolutely loved Paul. I mean, they didn't just respect him, they saw him as their #1 spiritual guide, to the point that some of them, and this is wild, actually called him their daddy.
And that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth does a cornerstone of the church become the poster boy for groups the church itself wanted to shut down? It's a genuine historical puzzle, and today we're going to follow the clues like detectives and see if we can crack this thing. All right, our investigation starts with the most obvious evidence, the words themselves. The clues are kind of hiding in plain sight, right there in the vocabulary of one of his letters, the Epistle to the Colossians. First up is this word, pleroma. Now, in Colossians, it's used to talk about the fullness of God that's inside Christ. Sounds pretty standard. But, and here's the kicker, for the Gnostics, pleroma was a huge deal. It was their technical term for the entire perfect spiritual universe, the complete opposite of our broken material world. So seeing that word pop up here, that's a massive red flag. Then you've got Sophia, which just means wisdom. But again, for Gnostics, Sophia was way more than just a concept. It was a core part of their whole belief system, sometimes even a divine female character whose actions explained why the universe is so messed up. So the heavy focus on divine wisdom in Colossians, well, it definitely fits the Gnostic pattern. And that brings us to Gnosis itself. The idea that you're saved through a special, secret kind of spiritual knowledge. That's literally the definition of Gnosticism. It's what gave the movement its name. And guess what? That whole concept is a central theme in Colossians. So look, it's not just about a few random words that happen to overlap. Pleroma, Sophia, Gnosis. These are the fundamental building blocks of the Gnostic worldview. Finding them all together in one of Paul's letters, it strongly suggests that whoever wrote it was thinking about the world in a very similar way to the Gnostics. Okay, so we've got the language down. Now let's zoom out. We're going to move from single words to the big picture, the entire map of the universe that the text seems to be using. And let me tell you, it's a map that shows a massive battle. The book talks all about how Christ won this big victory over these things it calls principalities and powers. Now that sounds pretty vague. Who or what are they? Well, how you answer that question totally changes how you see everything. If you're reading this from a mainstream perspective, you might think principalities and powers means, I don't know, Roman emperors or just generic evil forces. But for the Gnostics? Oh no, it was way more specific and way more terrifying. To them, these weren't just earthly rulers. They were cosmic jailers, malevolent, angel-like beings who literally run the prison that is our universe. And that just perfectly sums up the Gnostic idea of salvation. See, in their view, Christ didn't just come to save you from your sins. He was this epic hero from another dimension who invaded our hostile reality to defeat the prison wardens and break humanity out. That exact story is a Gnostic classic, and it's playing out right here in Colossians. Okay, so just to recap, we've got shared language and a shared map of the cosmos. The clues are all pointing in one direction. And now, it's time to name our prime suspect, the person who might be the key to this whole thing. Everybody, meet Marcion. He was a super influential Christian thinker in the 2nd century, and also super controversial. His big idea was that the God of the Old Testament, the angry, vengeful one, was a totally different and lesser God than the loving Father that Jesus talked about. His theology is basically the bridge between what we think of as early Christianity and full-on Gnosticism. So here's how the argument really locks into place. Step 1. We notice all this Gnostic-sounding language and cosmology in Colossians. Step 2. We realize those exact same ideas are the greatest hits of Marcion's theology. And that leads to step 3, the big hypothesis. Maybe Marcion wasn't just interpreting the text. Maybe he's the source of the text. And this right here is the really mind-blowing part of the whole theory. The idea isn't that Gnostics just found Colossians and twisted it to fit their own narrative. No, the argument is that the book was already a Gnostic-style Marcionite text from day one. The Gnostic flavor isn't an add-on, it was baked into the original recipe. So we've got all our pieces on the board. We've got the language, we've got the cosmology, and we've got our prime suspect, Marcion. So let's put it all together and see if we finally solve the puzzle of why the Gnostics loved Paul so much. The whole argument really stands on three main pillars. First, you have the shared vocabulary, all those key Gnostic terms. Second, you have the shared cosmology, this idea of a cosmic prison break. And the third pillar, the Marcionite hypothesis, is what ties it all together, giving us a source for the first two. So, what's the bottom line? It paints a picture of a proto-Gnostic Paul, at least in this text. The reason the Gnostics thought Paul was their daddy is because in writings shaped by Marcion, they saw a perfect reflection of their own beliefs. They weren't misreading him at all. They were recognizing one of their own. And just like that, the mystery is solved.
You know, this whole thing just goes to show how taking a fresh look at something ancient can totally flip our understanding of history on its head. It really makes you wonder, right? If a secret this big can be hiding in one of the most famous books in the world, what other incredible histories are just sitting there in old texts waiting for someone to connect the dots?